You know how tech companies make new laptops or phones that are thinner every year, even if it makes them worse overall? Well, it seems to be working for them, so I thought I'd give it a go within my area of expertise, piston doors. So what would some 1 block wide piston doors look like? Let's see. Quite a few of these have been done already. 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, even 6x6. So maybe we need to add an extra challenge. Observerless redstone has been a popular category for a while now. It may be pointless, but it is fun. Even with this restriction though, 3x3, 4x4 and 5x5 have all been done. So I chose to do 6x6. Here it is. Now as you can tell, this door isn't exactly small. That's because being observerless adds some challenges. Observers are probably the best redstone component, and you don't just have to take my word for it.
The observer is absolute god tier. In fact, you know what? It's going up here.
Part of why they're so powerful is that they're by far the best pushable power source. Watch this comparison between the two common movable power sources. The redstone block leaves the lower piston extended. If you want to move that piston now, you've got to remove the redstone block first. The observer, on the other hand, provides a pulse, so the lower piston is ready to be moved right away. This is much more convenient and easier to work with. Luckily, there is a third option which is also observerless. Here, there is a minecart inside of a block which has a detector rail on top. When the blocks are pushed down, the minecart activates the rail but then falls, which deactivates the rail about a second later. This is great, but it only works when the pistons are pushing downwards. For it to work going upwards, you can instead use this setup. Here, there's a minecart that's aligned to a very specific point, which means it can be pushed by these blocks in the adjacent column, but those blocks don't support the minecart once it's at the top, meaning it will fall down and create a pulse on the detector rail rather than powering it permanently. By combining these two ideas, the main piston assembly of the 6x6 can be put together. Let's take a closer look at how it works. At a high level, this door works by using a large piston assembly to push the door blocks down to open or up to close, which is what you're seeing right now. So, for a minute, let's ignore all the wiring and just focus in on this assembly. We can simplify this even further because the two halves of the assembly are symmetrical. Let's just focus on one. What remains is made up of a few different components that split into 4 categories. We have up spreaders, down spreaders, up repeaters, and down repeaters. Let's check out each category. First is the up spreaders. Because the door is only 1 block wide, we can only power the outer edges of the main piston assembly. In order to power the inner layers, we use these spreaders to spread the signal between layers. Let's watch them. They both work in the same way. They use a floated minecart pulse generator to power the top piston of the worm, which then pulls the lower piston up into the permanent power of a redstone block. This pushes the adjacent layers up. Next is the down spreader. We push down the outermost worm. This activates one of the downwards minecart pulse generators. This pulse powers the worm of the next layer in, spreading the signal, but also powers the upwards piston of the same worm. This resets the worm 1 block lower, so it's in position to push down again. Pistons have a push limit of 12 blocks. This isn't enough for this door, so we use these repeaters to reset the push limit back to 12. The down repeaters are the simplest component of the lot. It's just a downwards minecart monostable powering another set of pistons. When the assembly gets pushed up, the 3 layers don't all push at the same time. Because of how the up spreader works, the middle layer goes first and then the 2 outer layers. The up repeater uses this by pushing up a detector rail first, then uses the outer layers to push the floated minecart up into the rail. This activates all 3 upwards pistons, resetting the push limit. Now that you know how the piston assembly works, let's take a look at the door as a whole. First is the input circuit in red. This takes the input from the lever and distributes the signal to everywhere it needs to go. On the opening, this powers the yellow circuit, which pushes down the main piston assembly to about halfway. It's a really simple circuit, it's just a basic clock, quite slow in order to stay in sync with the detector rails in the piston assembly, with a dropper counter which stops the clock when it runs out of items. The way the pistons are actually powered is with a pusher. This is so that the update order is always correct and goes from top to bottom. My favourite part of the circuit is actually the last move. In this one, the piston worm's powered from a bud and is only updated by the concrete powder above it falling down onto the piston. The reason that layer of concrete powder is there is for the cyan circuit. This circuit pushes in the ceiling blocks. It has to use this weird folding setup to get around the piston push limit while avoiding all of the other inputs necessary for the doors to function. The pink circuit continues where the yellow left off, pushing the piston assembly all the way down to the floor. It's powered by one of these super old school hopper timers. I use loads of these in this door. The brown circuit is the floor version of the cyan ceiling pusher. It's much simpler though, as there's enough space to have a simpler folding setup. And now let's look at the closing. The red circuit powers both sides of the bottom, the brown, and also sends a signal up to the top for later. The signal that goes to the bottom is used to power the lime green circuit, which controls pushing the piston assembly back up to the top. The circuit is split into 3 separate parts. The first part, which you're watching now, sends the piston assembly back up to the point at which the ceiling pusher can replace the ceiling with the concrete powder blocks from before. This circuit is powered by the signal from the red circuit right at the beginning of the closing. The second and third sections of the lime circuit are separate so that the inputs to the piston assembly can be split into 2 separate blocks. This ensures that the correct piston, this one way down at the bottom, is always powered instead of one higher up. Also helping with this is using repeaters at the bottom of each block of inputs and comparators at the top. Repeaters are always processed before comparators due to tile tick priority, ensuring the block powers from bottom to top. The one final thing to mention is a part of the piston assembly I didn't talk about earlier. It's physically different on the way up to the way down. On the closing, I had to take a block out that was needed on the opening. I probably could have changed the design of the assembly to avoid this, but as a workaround, there's a powdered snow block that gets removed by a dispenser before the closing starts and added back before the opening. The bucket is transported up and down in a hopper minecart that sits inside the piston assembly. And that's pretty much it. If you want to have a closer look at the door, I'll leave a world download link in the video description. Thanks for watching.